Hello, welcome to the Dublin Conversations. Darryl, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Andy. I'm Darryl Sparey. I'm the MD and co-founder of performance-driven marketing and communications agency Hard Numbers.
Welcome here today, Darryl. So we're going to take on a journey of 5 steps to Dublin, where we explore the different dimensions that we believe shape the universe we operate in terms of our social interactions. And so step one is that, so going back there, that we believe a lot of people in the communications business are a bit like the early astronomers who created very elaborate maps of the universe, but they had a fundamental problem of the Earth being at their center. And we believe that you can't really sort of think bigger, or you're limited in thinking bigger, unless you need to step outside, engage with a bigger universe to see a bigger picture. So we created the 5 steps to Dublin. And the first of these steps is at the center of the universe is this idea of confidence. And confidence we're defining not in a sort of as the usual use of the word as like self-assurance, but rather that meaning that a reliable expectation of subsequent reality. And we regard one of the most fundamental human functions after breathing, eating, using your senses is this idea of managing perceptions of future behaviors. And as a result, that creates confidence. And confidence can exist at 5 different levels. Confident in your perception of reality, it is reliable. Confidence in your purpose, why you here. Confidence you have in others and others have in you. Confidence others have in each other, and a sort of zeitgeist confidence, spirit of the time. And so we believe that your authentic purpose makes the task of earning confidence easier because it provides you with a more coherent and compelling story to make it easier to earn that confidence. So any thoughts on that step one there, Darryl?
It's sort of quite strongly similar to the concept of trust, right? And or as trust being, similarly, like I trust my perception of reality. People trust me because I'm clear about my purpose in something. Trust that you have in one another, etc. And I don't know if you've ever read Patrick Lencioni's 5 functions of the 5 dysfunctions of a team or whatever, and he goes
through. Do.
It's a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant book. He goes through five dysfunctions. A dysfunctioning team has these 5 characteristics, the 5 dysfunctions they have, and then he goes through the 5 functions of the 5 kind of characteristics or behaviors of a good functioning successful team. And the first one is vulnerability-based trust. It's the ability for people to trust one another enough that they can be vulnerable with one another, and that's the first step to then building a successful team. So, I think the confidence thing as a term and makes sense, and I kind of see it through the lens of trust, right? People trust, trust in one another. Trust because they know that my purpose or that my why for doing anything is right. So I go along with that.
Certainly. I mean, we include reference trust in our step 3 in terms of what you need to achieve with others. I just wonder whether confidence in that trust is an outcome of a social interaction, but then the dividend of that trust is that you have confidence. So it sits perhaps at a higher level. That trust is sort of a foundation stone for confidence, which we're elaborating, I think. But this idea that confidence is sort of is like the star literally on top of the Christmas tree, as such of hierarchy of ideas going forward.
I've never heard someone say confidence is the dividend of trust, but I love it, and I will now start using it myself.
That's great. Well, let's see the rest of the journey brings us. So. So this is a delightful Simply model developed by a guy called Professor Gareth Loudon of Imperial College London, of that we connect with others, a simple process of listening, connect, doing. So we listen with all our our widest senses, and then we connect with things, and do could be a development of an idea as much as a tangible action. And it's a vibrant model of listen, do, feedback, and the vibrancy of this model is driven with the purpose being like that pumping heart at the center of it. So listen and connect, do is how we interact, and that we live in a world where sociologists can now do experiments that 2 out of 3 people will help a stranger, and what means 1 out of 3 don't. And that's not a vast moral judgment, but to inspire the idea that there's 2 prime instincts that drive people. One is a we-led thinking, where your response is to think of the collective interest, and the me-led. And obviously context can determine your response, but nonetheless, we believe the Dublin conversations that this idea of we-led thing could be a foundation stone for a philosophy of a public relations approach, where you look at the group interest, whereas an advertising may be a more me-led approach. And what's also emerged is this word comms, which hasn't got any formal definition, but it seems to be adopted by a number of people in terms of describing a bigger process than there exists in terms, say, for example, of PR, advertising, and communications. So I'm throwing a lot about listening, connect, do, we and me led, and the idea of comms. Any thoughts there, Darryl?
Yeah, a couple of things. I don't want to sound like a Tory, but I do think that at some level, what might be described as altruistic behavior, somewhere in it has some form of self-interest in there, and it can be just the baseline of the track, or it could be the drum, or it could be the guitar over the top, or the lead singer singing the song. But somewhere in there, in all what might be thought of as altruistic acts, there is some form of self-interest. Because why do you give to charity? Because you want to feel good about yourself, or you don't want to feel bad about yourself, or whatever, or you want, or you do it because so other people might have gone through something similar to you, and you think, if you went through a bad time previously, and then you think, well, I don't want anyone to go through the thing that I went through, so I would have wanted someone to have helped me in the way that I'm helping that person. So there's that. The only other thing I would add to that.
Sorry.
No, go on, mate.
I was just going to add about, if you're familiar with the concept of reciprocal altruism, where
I'm not.
So reciprocal altruism is by me, like, for example, you're drowning in a river, I dive in to rescue at the risk of my life. That doesn't make sense in a self-interest way, but in a reciprocal altruism way, is that I'm thinking, well, should I be danger of drowning that river? Someone like Darryl might come along and dive in and rescue me. So, and it's a bit like the Yogi Berra quote of, if you don't go to other people's funerals, they won't go to yours.
I love that.
So I think there's an element there of that the we-led could be perhaps yes, and ultimately there's a self-interest, but in terms of an expression, maybe as a strategy of self-interest, that the communal response as opposed to purely the me-led response, possibly there. As I say, I think it's an interesting point there to emphasize that as a Darwin, we're all self-interested in our sort of gene preservation sort of thing that perhaps drives behaviours there, possibly. I apologise. Okay, now you're going to elaborate there about maybe we-led
I think it's a really. I think sometimes, right, like, if you think about charity communications, for example, or something like that, they miss the communicating for the self-interest element, and they think that people are only motivated to do something altruistically. And I think if you not to be as brazen as to say donate to this charity, because I promise you'll feel better about yourself at the end of it. Or like feel guilt about how much money you've got at the end of the month. Right. But I think there's something there. The only other thing I was going to say, and you know this, you probably, I don't know, do you know the film When We Were Kings, the story of the Muhammad Ali fight? The bit at the end of the fight where the bit at the end of the film, where they talk about Muhammad Ali, and it's when he's giving a tour, sort of talking tour at university. He's talking about his career and all the rest of it. And someone says, give us a poem. And he says, me, we. And then the guy who's interviewed at the end of it says, according to the Webster's, book of poems, the shortest poem in the English language is The Antiquity of Microbes, Adam Hadam. And actually, that's a shorter poem, and that Muhammad Ali's poem should be recognised as the shortest poem in the English language.
Yeah. So it's a lovely, almost affirmation that there's this spectrum of
and I couldn't agree with you more.
No. Okay, so we then move on to the next stage of about that in order to interact with other people, and this is influenced by the work of people like behavioural psychologist Professor Daniel Kahneman, that we're emotionally driven animals. So how do you connect with an emotionally driven animal? Well, it makes it easy by identifying that we connect through what we call heuristics, rules of thumb. And we believe there's 5 key heuristics at work. The first is being known to get known and noticed. So if you need to socially interact with someone, you need to either get known and noticed or be liked. And like can be not just affective liking, but respect, admiration, and paradoxical liking. Like you might actively dislike someone, say like a Piers Morgan type celebrity, where you dislike them, but by disliking them, they register on your emotional scale. This comes in where you mentioned earlier about trust. So you need to earn that trust, as I say, perhaps as a foundation stone to fuel an arising sense of confidence, possibly. And then front of mind, even though you may be well known, we're what's known as cognitive misers, also known as lazy, that we choose an immediate available option, maybe sometimes over the rational best, and being talked about. So we're unsure of things, so we get social proof through word of mouth, things we read in the media and talked around us. So these 5 things frame what the task of what you need to do to successfully socially interact. And there may be a different emphasis. They may range from a lot of negative and positive. So sometimes you might want to keep your head down, not be known. Sometimes you might want to be disliked, and so on. And then further to that is to say so that it provides a map of how we go about socially interacting. So I just wonder, any thoughts there, anything missing or anything, any thoughts there?
I would only, and I'm quite sure cleverer people than me came up with this. So I would only moderate the liked bit to recognition of competence, right? Because liked, inherent within it is the concept of, do I like that person or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, if one of the cleverest people that I've yet met in marketing, Stephen Kenwright, one of the founders of Rise at 7, said, all I want to do is occupy the space in people's mind where they think creative first search company, right?
Yeah.
Or like the bit that people think, right, content marketing for search, creative content for search, Rise at 7, right? Now, there are lots of people out there that like Rise at 7 and that like Carrie Rose and Steve and stuff for the things they do and the way, but there's lots of other people that don't like them, right? And there's lots of haters and idiots and things like that say horrible things about them online and all the rest of it, right? But no one could disagree with the fact that they are known, that they are recognized as being competent, that through the recognition of their competence, they're trusted as like a leading company in that space, that through that industry category leadership, they become front of mind, and as a result of that, they are then talked about a lot. So I would only moderate liked for recognition of competence, and then I'm all in on the model. I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So really, what I would say, that thing that the case study you described there, score highly on being not just known not for their name, but known for their sort of perceived qualities, and then as a result of that, there's an earned trust from that. But in terms of liking, I mean, a good example is Ryanair, where as I say, as a brand, I intensely dislike them, but I've have to fly with them because they're the only flights flying from London to Perugia last summer. And so I know they fly to London, Perugia, and I'll trust that they'll get me there. But
exactly. So you recognise their competence in the task of flying you from A to B, right?
Yeah.
There's someone who I will not name, who will remain nameless, but he is widely known as being an utter shit in the consumer PR market, right?
Yeah.
But no one can doubt his competence, right?
Yeah.
Like he clearly has built a really successful business and all the rest of it. So he's known, he's widely recognized to be competent. He's trusted through because of that competency that he's shown time and time again in doing it. And as a result, he's front of mind when people think consumer PR agency, right?
Yeah.
So and as a result, he gets talked about, you know, as a result.
But maybe his strategic weakness may be that should he run into a difficulty, he won't have that
Hasn't got goodwill to rely on.
Yeah.
No.
That's true. Okay. So, and then step 4 brings us then to, so you're familiar with the PESO model, but it goes profoundly beyond that. And it's not about channels, but strategic choices. So you need to achieve being known, like, trusted, front of mind. How do you go about it? Well, open. So own is a profound expansion, not just own channels, but your own existence, your own behaviors, reputation, who you choose to connect with, how you make decisions, even spending time with someone can be a way of earning trust. So a profound expansion of the dimension of own, and introducing the dimension of nudge. So through nudge, it's possible to influence behaviors without communicating with people, by making choices either easier or harder for them. So we believe this provides a spectrum of like your available strategies and tactics that you can then choose to employ to achieve the 5 goals there. So I just wonder, any thoughts there, Darryl, on that?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. The nudge bit is new to me in terms of seeing it within a kind of PESO model, you know, like this, but it's not new in terms of the, you know, the kind of thinking or whatever. And there's definitely agencies like like Shook, and Lin Global, and you know, and others, and obviously Ogilvy, you know, Rory Sutherland at Ogilvy talks a lot about you know, behavioral science and things like that. So it's increasingly something that people are thinking about and incorporating into their communications. So
Okay. And I say the joy of these is almost they provide a checklist as well. And also we've got a Dublin Conversation produced a toolkit of over 34 tools, including one on nudge, to serve as an introduction to how it's used and how to use it ethically there. And then we move on then to the last stage of step 5. It's called regenerative comms. And the critical word is regenerative, in the sense that the existing public relations and communication practice operates within really essentially a 2-way communication model of like listen and engage, but then really just focuses on the actors participate with each other without really referencing the wider context, their environment. And so therefore we believe that for any social interaction, you should seek to replenish the social fabric of trust, togetherness, ability to come together. So hopefully like today we'll have a successful interaction and you go away committed to the fact that we live in a society where we can cooperate. Whereas if you don't do that and diminish the social fabric, that really weakens the ties that bond our society together. So critically, when we connect and interact, this need to be mindful of like replenishing and not diminishing the social fabric. So just wonder, any thoughts on this sort of final step 5 here, Darryl?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with I love the word replenish. It's a lovely word. And it speaks very much to the concept of needing to think of goodwill as a line of credit, right, between you and someone else in either direction, right? And you need to always be thinking about, how can I be making more available via that line of credit than I'm getting in the other direction?
I think we love a good metaphor, and I think you've hit upon triggered a really profound insight there, that we need to investigate this word replenish. So like going back to the earlier book you mentioned, it might be a book on the 5 rules of replenishing. But
I love it as a word because it's a lovely sounding word. But I also love it as a concept because it, you know, any relationship between any organization and its stakeholders, its publics, you know, etc., as you said earlier, like it's a two-way street. It's something that needs to constantly be, you know, tended to, paid attention to, replenished. You know, I really like it as a concept. I don't hear the word replenish enough.
No, man, and you've really triggered something there about. I'll race you to write a book on the 5 rules of replenishing, but I think that's a great insight there. And just that reference there about two-way communication, it comes out in my mind like a road. And at the moment, we're like sort of 2 motor vehicles, maybe going opposite directions along the road, but we're just concentrating on the performance of the motor vehicles and not on the fact, like, are they polluting the environment? Are they driving dangerously for other, like, pedestrians and so on? So I think there's a lovely metaphor you've introduced there, Darryl, in that way. And then,
but also, like, you know, roads need maintenance, right?
Yeah.
As well, right? Like, just because you build a road isn't something that lasts 100 years.
Yeah.
There's wear and tear.
Yeah.
There's, you know, all the rest of it, and everything needs maintenance.
Yeah.
You know, replenishing, to make sure that it functions optimally. Yeah.
I think both of us have ruined our showers for the next few days, conjuring about the idea of replenishment there. But
Love it.
Yeah, so really, having done these sort of 5 steps, it gives you the ability to, like, step outside, unlearn existing ideas like PR, advertising, communications, and so on, and maybe think about what ways, you know, what contributes, what creates a bigger universe for how we operate. So having done these sort of 5 steps, how do you feel? Do you feel more, like, confident about addressing what does the future better look like? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, do you know what? I took notes and screenshots and stuff because I was very, like, it's made me stop and think about my approach to stuff. And it's also given me a different perspective on things. So yeah, really interesting framework. And it's also brought to the fore a couple of words that I don't use enough as well. So yeah, very helpful framework.
Yeah. Well, if I can use one of those, how should the Dublin Conversations replenish itself, do things different? I mean, any thoughts there?
That's a great question. I honestly don't. I think how can we scale up the number of people that are engaging with this, like this, beyond this kind of one-to-one, then make it, this is one-to-one. There's lots of value you can get from one-to-one, but make this a lot more one-to-many, because I think this is a really thought-provoking way of framing kind of what I spend my time doing. And I think other people would really benefit from that. So as much as I know it's a conversation, and I do really like that as a thing, you know, two-way street, all the rest of it, I think making it a bit one-to-many, there's no
that's a great thought there. So any specific action steps to maybe make that happen, or advance that in any way?
Anything you want me to do to help promote this, Andy, you just let me know.
That is fantastic. Right? That's a wonderful
offer. I've got a couple of followers on Twitter, and I'm more than happy to share this with them. No problem.
Yeah. Well, very much we're at the heart of, I think, is creating a change-making community, and very much appreciate that kind offer. So listen, we're going to stop the recording, conclude a massive thank you from the Dublin Conversations for triggering some profound insights there. The joy of this is every conversation we grow thinking. Hope you've enjoyed it too. I'll switch the recording off there, and thank you, Darryl.
No worries, mate. Thank you. So that was helpful.